Hello and welcome to Split Informed and Split Smart. I am your host, Carl Roberts, and excited to be here for our show on the WGSN-DB Going Solo Network. The intention behind this show is to help everyone, amicable or hostile, to more easily reach positive, equitable, and peaceful agreements in their divorce. The principle behind SplitSmart is all about organization. Organization is the key to everything you want and need in the divorce process. It is the key to avoiding most drama, trauma, and expense. It's the key to protecting yourself and your family in the process. Everyone should know that the single difference between a good and ugly divorce is simply the presence of a bad actor. Bad actors can be one or both, man or woman, lawyer or litigant. We know that bad actors are typically good people who've just gotten tripped up by their emotions, bad advice from friends, family, or lawyer, and often a personality disorder or being a narcissist or borderline. So your chore from early on is to protect your family and yourself from the bad actor, regardless of who that may be, even if that bad actor may be yourself. Today, we are talking about disrupting divorce with our guest, Erika Englund, and Chief Strategy Officer with SupportPay and Divorce Attorney. Good morning, Erika, and thank you so much for joining us. We've had some technical challenges, but I'm glad you made it.
Good morning. It's lovely to be here.
Well, very good. Now, Erika, I've been chatting with you for quite some time, and give our audience just a little bit a taste of who you are and what your background is, what brought you to this work, and all this other fun stuff.
Yeah, sure. Well, I started as a middle child, and it all goes back to that. Growing up in a big rambunctious family as a middle child, always trying to figure out how to do something, how to get some attention, how to change a system so I could get something to go my way, and never really being a rule follower. But then I ended up as a family law attorney and was practicing family law for about 3.5 years as a litigation or a courtroom attorney. And I realized on a trip to Mexico that in all the time I had been practicing, I had never won a case. And I realized I was never going to win a case because the way the family law system is set up, and this is not a critique of the people in it, but just the system itself. Most of the time in family law cases, and any attorney will tell you this, people settle. And lawyers say a good settlement is when two people are equally unhappy, which to me does not seem like a win, right? Then sometimes I would actually lose a case, and sometimes I would win a case, but it would cost so much, and I would see it just absolutely destroy people to the point where I realized there's really no outcome in family law that I can walk away from saying, I won here. And I left, created a mediation practice from the ground up, just exclusively designed for affordable, efficient, internet enhanced, tech enhanced divorce solutions. And after mediating for about 10,000 hours and 12 years, I left in 2020 to take a job in the legal tech sector. So now I am the Chief of Strategy for SupportPay and WeParent. SupportPay is the world's first child support management app, and WeParent is the best reviewed co-parenting and calendaring app. And so as the Chief of Strategy, I get to do things like engage with the community and see what the trends are out there in the divorce world. And delighted to be here on the show today as part of that with you.
Well, terrific. I do recognize you as one of those leading voices out there that is about trying to change this arena. And I think the system. Yeah, I'm not as polite as you probably are in my critique of the system, and that's probably why I haven't made the progress there that I'd hoped to make. But let's talk about the system. What is so first of all, the idea of disruption in divorce, those two words don't really necessarily go together, at least in my dreams they do, but they don't in reality. And But why is it so hard to disrupt this arena?
Good question. It is hard. It's incredibly hard for a few reasons. First, the divorce industry it's not nimble or agile. It's in fact ossified. It's been built a certain way by certain people, and it's been like that for a very long time. So it's an institution now that has very little, there's very little benefit to the people inside the institution to changing that institution. And anyone who's been through a high conflict divorce knows the process takes an incredibly long time and costs insane amounts of money. We easily have clients spend $100,000 to $200,000 on legal fees here in California. So the people that are benefiting from the system are not going to be the people who change the system. And that's lawyers, judges, the clinical evaluators, the mediators that work within the court system, because for the most part, they'd be putting themselves out of a job if we no longer had family law matters heard in court. So the biggest reason that it's not changing anytime soon is that the people within the system are powerful and resistant to change. I do believe that there is room for disruption, but right now, people like you and I, rather than doing that from inside the system, need to make changes by going outside the system and giving people alternatives to going through the traditional courtroom divorce process. That's what and I know it's what you have been focusing on too in the last few years.
Yeah, I have, it's beating my head against the wall. And so I finally, back in January, gave a presentation after as much as 4 years of trying to present to, or even have the conversation so in Colorado, they have the standing committee, Supreme Court Standing Committee on Family Issues. And as you would think, is just, the members of that committee are judges and lawyers and the custody evaluators and, the bureaucrats. I take caution in saying that word bureaucrat because it's an offensive word to be called a bureaucrat. And so I gave this presentation, it was a 30-minute presentation. And I really had to concentrate and practice a few times beforehand to not let my contempt show. And part of it is just because the court system gives you all this lip service of that they're in this for the right reasons, that they're doing the right things, that they're looking out for your best interests, access to justice. And we've got another initiative doing this, that, and the other. But this problem has been on their plate for 20, 30, 40 years. And it has only evolved. The system has only evolved for the benefit of the lawyers, not the families. And part of that presentation was saying, why haven't you solved this problem? And part of my reasons and rationale was you lost focus as to who you're serving. You don't know who you're serving. You're serving yourselves. You're serving the bureaucracy. You're serving the system, but you're not serving the families. You've lost focus of what your purpose is. Your purpose is to help these couples, these families get to equitable, fair resolution. But again, what's your purpose? If that they'll say that that's their purpose, but they sure don't. They're serving themselves anyway. I can go spend days on end on all that.
Yeah, and I don't disagree with them that they think that they are serving the best interest of the people in the system. It's that they are naturally averse to change and disinclined to take away their own livelihoods. So many of them have construed it in their heads as yeah, there's lots of things that are wrong here, and we sure wish we could do better, but we're doing the best within the system that we have. And they're just not able to consider how many very, very simple ways there are to not overhaul the system, but just to make even small changes for the better. So yeah, it's frustrating for me as well.
Yeah, I mean, and part of that list, and I'm trying to pull up my PowerPoint just so I can kind of refer back to it, but part of that list was just the blinders. You know, these bureaucratic and legal blinders that they've got to operate within. And they are immune. This is where I start to kind of lose some of my tact in my speech, but they are immune to innovation. They're immune to problem solving. They're immune to serving their constituents.
And we may have an attorney out there, a judge, a clerk, who would like to see some change and is trying to effectuate change within her courtroom or jurisdiction, but they are surrounded by so many other people upholding the system that even the people inside that would like to see differences made are struggling to make any headway.
Yeah, and so I mean, because those the judges are just the face of a huge bureaucracy, a huge system, and and so they are constrained in different ways of their mentality, risk averse, by their adherence to what they believe is the right thing with the law. Their well ingrained beliefs of well, we've always done it this way.
Yeah.
And so it is just just all painful stuff. So so I took that same presentation and gave it to the self-represented litigation network. Again, where you have more people who are trying to push the system and are trying to change system, because I mean, again, in theory, that's why they're there, to try to evolve our legal system so that they're more constituent oriented. I left away with that frustrated as well, because I mean, certainly with my technology of organization, it does, I mean, inspired for the high conflict. I did spend hundreds of thousands of dollars, over 9 years that didn't need to be.
Yeah.
And from a lot of my beliefs and philosophies is that, the courts have all these rules, statutes, and laws, to govern the process, to try to promote transparency, to get you to protect the common good and get you to that fair and equitable resolution. But they have zero ability to enforce all those rules, laws, and statutes, short of one of the parties filing a motion.
Okay, I want to talk about you more. I want to talk more about this with you, but I'm going to switch to headphones because my audio is getting a little bit funny over here. So please excuse my interruption here.
All right, well, no worries.
As you can see, I am not saying as SupportPay. If Erika can't work it, we sell it.
All right, now say that all again.
All right, can you hear me okay?
I can now. What did you just say?
Oh, I was speaking while my headphones were plugged in, underlying my point. We have a saying at SupportPay: if Erika can't use it, or if Erika can't work it, we can't sell it. Because I don't know how I ended up working in a tech company, Carl. It's like anyone who meets me is like, "Are you sure you work in a tech company? Are you sure?" So anyway, I agree with you very much. And it's stressful. It's frustrating that there's a disinclination for change. What I do find to be incredibly hopeful is I see consumers now who are saying, I'm not going to go through that system. I'm not going to pay those fees. I'm not losing my house to pay for an attorney. I don't want to wait 2 years for a divorce. And I'm interested now in talking about other options and going other routes. And this is something we really didn't see even a year, 2 years ago. So it's hopeful for me that change is being driven by the consumer of the system, by the family court litigant. And that's where I think we're going to see some change.
Yeah, well, that's the only way we're going to see it, and I would certainly agree with you from that. And so but it's always been that only those 5 to 10% of us end up in court, at least so we're told. There's still another 15, 20, 30% that have or go lawyer up and then go through that mediation process only to settle, before court. And but I would agree with you. That is the hope.
It's so crazy to me though. If you call a family law attorney and you ask, okay, well, I really don't want to go to trial, they'll say, oh, I settled 9 out of 10 of my cases before trial. And they really do. But the problem is they settle them before trial, but it's right before trial. They don't settle the cases early. They still go through the same discovery. They go through the same disclosure process. They have preliminary hearings. They have settlement conferences and mandatory mediation. So yeah, technically you're not going to trial, but you're still spending $30,000, $50,000, $80,000 on attorney fees, which is just not reasonable if what you were going to do is settle in the first place. It makes very little sense to me.
Yeah, I do think that, I am hopeful that there are more attorneys that are of like mind that, again, just that are more focused on solution for that family as opposed to being a zealot for their client or their billing. And so, that's one of the things I've felt gratitude for is in some of this work, is regardless of what kind of traction I'm making, that, again, being able to kind of work with different lawyers and not so many lawyers, but again, a lot of mediators and coaches and people like yourself that, are of like mind and heart and want that best. So, there's just, there's just no soft pedaling yet. But I tell you what, just because I want to get into some other stuff in more deeper fashion, but now's probably a quick time to take a 1-minute break or so. This is Carl Roberts with Split Informed and Split Smart with my host, Erika Englund. Did I say Englund or England?
England. I mean, you can say it any way you want, Carl. It's your show. Technically, it's England.
I always try to put that U up front in the front part of your name. Anyway, but that's Carl Roberts with Erika Englund with the Chief Strategy Officer with SupportPay, and we'll be back in a moment.
And become involved in the family court system, there are no winners. Everybody loses, especially the children. I know, because my custody battle lasted years, was completely unnecessary, and financially devastating. That experience inspired SplitSmart. SplitSmart is designed to empower both parents by giving them the structure they need to stay on course for a more peaceful and respectful co-parenting future. For less than amicable couples, our unique line item negotiation approach helps soften sometimes emotional stances into child-centered agreements that both parents can live with. Do you want your children to thrive and grow up with healthy, loving relationships with both parents? How much easier would it be if you could bypass the conflict and create a clear, supportive, and comprehensive co-parenting plan and schedule that's tailored specifically for your family? Can you imagine what it would be like if there were no arguments about money or child support? If any of this appeals to you, if you want to minimize the expense and drama of divorce, do yourself and your children a big favor and use SplitSmart to craft your co-parenting and support plans. And as an added benefit, even if you've done your best and still can't get all the way there, SplitSmart will have your information well organized, so a skilled mediator or family lawyer can efficiently help your family cross the finish line. Visit SplitSmart.com today to get started on creating a brighter and more joyous tomorrow for you and your kids.
Just thinking about you saying I can say your name any way I want to. It's my show. Okay. That's pretty funny. Good morning. This is, good afternoon. Well, it depends on when you're watching the show, but this is Carl Roberts with Split Informed and SplitSmart. And with my guest, Erika Englund, and Chief Strategy Officer of SupportPay. All right, Erika, child support. Well, I mean, and the challenge is you can't talk about child support without talking about custody, right? And I know we're trying to soften that up with talking about parenting time. But where do you see between those two, integrate them however you like, but again, where do less than amicable parents trip up in reaching those child-centered, future-oriented agreements?
There are a lot of places. Wow. You are correct that often we can't talk about child support without first talking about parenting time. And that's because in the majority of jurisdictions, the amount of support that is paid is in some way dependent on with whom the child lives. Even if parents have 50-50 custody, there can still be child support. So as a mediator, I often began with parenting time because it tends to be less contentious than support. And once we have parenting time in place, with many states, there's a calculator and that amount of parenting time is plugged in. And the first thing that can happen once it gets plugged in, let's say the parents have agreed that mom will have 40% custody and dad will have 60% custody. And then it gets plugged in and to all of a sudden mom realizes, wait, if I had more custody, I'd be getting more support. So then mom wants to go back and re-argue the custody arrangement because she knows that it has an impact on the dollars. So as a professional, I always start with parenting time. It's a really easy way to get parents to focus on the best interests of their children, much more so than talking about who buys the goldfish crackers. So we start there, but it's important for higher conflict parents to have in place a parenting plan or even some idea of timeshare before they go into a support discussion, because that is one area where they're really going to trip up. A second area where parents have tons of problems is if one parent is unemployed or underemployed. So let's say mom stayed home with the children and she works 10 hours a week at the children's school and school library. And that works fine for the family until they decide that they're going to divorce. At that point, dad would be saying, hey, you know how to work. You have a college degree. You're already working 10 hours per week. You need to go out and work more. And the mom would be saying, I can't work more because I've got even more going on. Now I'm driving the kids back and forth to school and I'm handling all of these custodial arrangements and I'm too stressed and I can't find a brand new job at this time in my life. So the parties have to come to some kind of agreement on whether we use the income that mom currently makes or the calculator uses income that she doesn't have. We call that imputation. And it's a recognition that mom can work, but chooses to work less. And because she chooses to work less, she gets less child and spousal support. is very common in areas where parents have younger children and one is not working or is working fewer hours, to have a big argument about earning capacity and underemployment. So that's one other big problem I see. Probably the third biggest problem that I see is when one parent is self-employed or has a complex compensation package. Self-employment is probably the worst. And I come from someone who was self-employed myself for many years. There are many, many things that the IRS will allow as a deduction on taxes that are not a deductible expense for child support. So as an example, the IRS might allow you to deduct your vehicle usage. And many people deduct their vehicle usage. However, when it comes to child support, the cost of your vehicle is irrelevant to the child support discussion. So parents have a lot of trouble, even amicable parents, figuring out how much money does a self-employed person really make, and what do we use to calculate, or what do we use to even determine how much income that is. It can be really tricky. It can cost tens of thousands of dollars in court to get that figured out. Even with the help of a mediator, we often have to bring in a professional. And sometimes the parent's not self-employed, but their compensation is tricky, like they receive variable bonuses, or they receive RSUs, which are restricted stock units, or they're part of an employee stock participation plan. So there are all kinds of ways that people are compensated in today's economy that don't easily translate into a calculator. And that's another minefield for parents in calculating support.
So in California, do you have to follow guidelines, or can you figure out whatever arrangement works for you the best? I mean, if your family, if you and your future ex-spouse agree to something,
yeah,
can you deviate?
You can deviate if you're able to certify, and this has to be literally written into your agreement, that one, you have a right to guideline support. Two, you're choosing to make an arrangement that is not guideline. We call it deviating from guideline here. Three, that this arrangement is in the best interest of the children and it will cover the needs of the children in both households. And four, most important, the children are not receiving any cash aid welfare. So in all of those circumstances, if the children are not, oh, go ahead.
The children are not receiving what?
Cash aid welfare.
Okay.
So if your children are not receiving cash aid welfare, if you have a right to use a calculated amount of support, but you choose to deviate from it because you think it's in your child's best interest to do so, you absolutely can do that in California, but your order has to be constructed the right way so that a judge will approve it. Very, very often in mediation, I saw parents deviating from standard support guidelines.
Yeah, I think so. We've talked before, but I've got very definitive beliefs on a lot of this, and I think that again, reasonable, amicable couples figure this out easily enough every day. And in doing so, they innately make two very important decisions, whether they're thinking about it or not. One is that they do separate time and money issues to just solve both more easily. If once we make that disconnection, then again, it's easier to solve both. And on the money side, they are clearly distinguishing between kind of adult benefit of money versus child benefit of money. And when I talk about that, so yeah, I am, again, when we talk about support, it is very easily from my perspective, again, child support intertwines spousal support. I mean, it's not by language, but when we're supporting lifestyle, when the statutes talk about previous lifestyle or trying to balance the lifestyles, that's where we can start to get into the cost of housing, travel, or, and again, you talk about these, when we talk about the Hollywood movie stars, or, Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie, millions of dollars about child support. It ain't got a damn thing to do with about that child. And so the more that they can kind of distinguish between what directly benefits the child and what is more for the household, there's a enormously easier path there, just to avoid that conflict. Because most everybody, not everybody, but most everybody wants to support their child to the best of their ability. But not a single one amongst us wants to support the lifestyle of the ex through child support. And
it is though a mature and adult recognition to know that part of supporting your child is paying the rent and paying the utility bills and ensuring that the other parent has a car to take the children to school back and forth. So I think it is a common misperception people have that when I'm paying child support to be heteronormative, oh, I'm just supporting the mom. And you are supporting the mom, but in a way that allows her to provide for the child. So a direct payment between parents can be fraught with acrimony for parents, but it is important for me to recognize that direct payments of supports are necessary because the parent is the person who provides for the lifestyle of the child. And there's really not a good way when the parties have very, very disparate incomes to have the parent provide for the needs of the lower income child without making a payment to the other parent. So I just wonder what you suggest that people do in those cases.
So I am, thank you for asking. Yeah, I mean, because in this paradigm of mine of separating adult benefit from child benefit, yeah. So the cost of housing, the cost of transportation, the cost of travel, the cost of lifestyle, I do associate that more with the spousal support, and I do think that again. So as we, and it is. Not everybody agrees with this, obviously, but the more that we can kind of focus on that this is specifically for the child, the more everybody kind of embraces that, right? And so we remove the vast amount of acrimony when we can see, when we know that it's about for the child. And then when we my language, not most people, but when we kind of mix that with spousal support language or supporting the rent, mortgage, whatever the case may be, trying to balance those lifestyles or trying to accommodate for the disparate incomes. If you put that more into the spousal support category and then negotiate that from that perspective, again, it's a much easier long-term approach just to removing that ongoing acrimony. And because if again, yeah, because we want to support our child to the best of our ability, and we don't necessarily agree. I mean, I'm sure you've seen it plenty of times. Again, people don't take jobs or underemployed, or when they get a new spouse, or a new boyfriend, girlfriend, child support's back in play.
Absolutely.
And it should not be. Again, if we can share the expenses to the best of our abilities, again, we embrace those. If we can contribute directly to child-specific accounts, whether it's savings, allowance for the new car, or for college, when we make those contributions direct for their benefit, again, we embrace that to the best of our ability.
So in this circumstance, would you have an order that was about the same amount in two different circumstances, except rather than it being heavier on child support and light on spousal support, your order would be heavier on spousal support and lighter on child support?
No, it's just a distinction. it's more about the distinction than it is how it's weighted. And because in my approach within SplitSmart, you're kind of going through a line item budget of expenses, everything from, education, medical, miscellaneous into extracurricular. And those miscellaneous can be cell phones and Game Boys, whatever the case, or game stations, whatever they're called. And that's fine so long as you all agree to it. And then, because you got disparate incomes, well, okay, I make a lot more. I'll pay 75% or I'll pay 90% of that. Because it's for the kid, I embrace more of that. And now, okay, well, because that was so easy. Okay, well, yeah, I'll throw some more money that way just because I'm a good guy and I want you to be, it's a small price to pay to kind of keep the peace, right? And so I'll give more towards spousal support, because it makes sense to me. It
can be very helpful to start a discussion in a place where people agree and have shared values. That can actually be a really helpful way to kick off a difficult discussion. So that's interesting that you've done that. I'm not sure if you intentionally tried to utilize mediation principles there in putting together SplitSmart, but that's what a mediator would do.
Yeah, I mean, the thing again, most everybody, again, we want to figure out parenting time, and we know how often people say, well, 75-25 works for us until we see the guidelines, and they say, I got to have 50-50. So, contested custody in my vernacular is never about the child. It's always about money, control, and or hatred. And the more that we can kind of limit the money incentive to do whatever that is by separating time and money, the better we can manage the other control and the other punitive aspects of the discussion. So yeah, I am, as you know, commissioner on the Colorado's Child Support Review Commission. I'm also very heavily involved these days with, I don't know if you're familiar with the Good Plus Foundation, as well as the Ascend group out of the Aspen Institute. We're getting pretty heavy and steady, and something you may not know, I've kind of alluded to it in our limited exchanges because you've been so busy lately, but I've started a nonprofit here. And part of that is to provide legal aid in child support, the one area where legal aid is not provided. Of all the legal aspects of divorce, legal aid is not provided for those low incomes, and we have to start bringing them out of incomes these days for, first of all, we want to steer them out of that child support system, steer them out of the court system. And if they're in it, steer them out of it. But if they're in it, help them navigate through it a little bit more.
That's so fantastic. Congratulations to you.
Hopefully I get congratulations about 10 years from now.
Well, take them now for making that step. I will get you free SupportPay subscriptions for your clients that go through your nonprofit, because once parents have a support order in place, the next step is figuring out how they're actually going to pay support and how they're going to handle those reimbursements back and forth. And it is really important for parents, particularly of lower income, to be able to get that $20 copay that the other parent owes, or to get the $35 back that they spent for their half of the soccer. That's a lot of money to lower income parents, but even to higher income parents, those expenses add up. So we need to get your clients a free way to manage and track and organize all those expenses and pay and receive support. So talk to me after the show and we'll make sure to get you a code to give your people. But I agree very, very much that these are decisions that are often really well handled outside of court. In court in California, a judge will do the support calculator from the bench. She does it behind the bench. I've never maybe courts have this and I just haven't seen them, but I've never seen it done on a screen where the people actually see the inputs. But the judge puts in the numbers, sir, what's this? Ma'am, what's this? What's your this? Da, 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 da. Pops out a number and says, this is your support. And usually both of them are pissed off because it's less than one expected and more than the other expected. And there's no explanation for how all those numbers got there. And then they don't know that they still have to negotiate all the child's extra expenses on top of that base amount. So it's really frustrating for people walking in there, getting an order they don't understand, getting an order that's not complete. And unfortunately, it just heightens the acrimony that they have for each other, and they're more likely to turn around and end up in court again. And in California, going to court for a simple child support motion could easily run $10,000 in total fees. And that's not reasonable, right?
Yeah. Yeah, they don't have it. And,
yeah. And then on the other hand, we do have a state system here in California, but it is a bureaucratic system. It runs extremely slowly. It can take parents here anywhere from 6 months to 9 months to get a support order established. So during that whole time, the parents have no support and they have a lot of conflict because they don't have a support order in place. Then once a support order goes through the state, it's very difficult to change it. So if I changed my job and needed to recalculate support, it's an entire process to go and update that number through the state. And then the state doesn't collect any bonuses, any overtime support, any reimbursements for children's medical, dental, educational, or extracurricular expenses. So you go through all that trouble and the state's just collecting half the work anyway. For those reasons, giving someone a different path is really beneficial for them, not just in that it saves them money and it saves them time, but I imagine you probably see it reducing conflict for families too.
Oh, huge. I mean, that's the whole idea, is to better, and this is, again, just because I'm a white man, people think, okay, well, he just won't pay child support. This in the oppressive nature for the minority, for the Black, Hispanic, low income family. It is just an oppressive system, and it's not just for the fathers who are having to pay more than they probably could have ever on their best day, but the mothers need that support too. The mothers need that support. They need that help, but the system kind of pulls them into that conflict stance. And the system has them put the wrong priorities out there, and it's just a cluster from the word go. And
well, I'm delighted to hear that you're doing something about it.
Well, and Erika, I'm just delighted to know you, and I appreciate you coming on here. And I will say that you may not remember, because it probably hadn't been used that much, but we've got SupportPay integrated into SplitSmart.
Oh, that's so exciting.
And so we have, people can go in and, click the button at the end of the child support piece and they'll get a free year of using your app. So I look forward to more people using it.
I love it. And I'm a huge fan of the app for 3 reasons. First of all, it allows people to take some control over part of the process rather than just walking into a lawyer's office and handing over all control from the get-go. It empowers people to make strides to move forward in the process. The second reason is divorce requires a ton of paperwork, and it is very stressful for people to pull that paperwork together. I'm trying to do my taxes right now. I just got a 40-page tax organizer from my CPA. And I called her and I was like, listen, Nicole, it's doing the 40-page organizer that's my problem. I could probably figure out my taxes. Honestly, what I can't figure out is where I get all this paper, what things I download, what you need, what you don't need. And it's so stressful, I can't get started. And divorce is even worse. It requires so much documentation from sources that a party might not even have access to, that having a system to organize and manage that just calms people out of the fight or flight response and gives them a way to follow a system. So I love that about it. And then, of course, as a mediator, I love that people can make their own and reach their own agreements. And I am such a firm believer in the idea that nobody knows better than you what is right for you and your family. No one. So you should have the option before anyone else to sit down with your spouse and talk through agreements, talk through alternatives, and put together as much as you can without handing it over to other professionals. So I just love the empowerment of SplitSmart. I love that it handles the part of the process that's extremely stressful and expensive if you have lawyers do it. And I love that it facilitates agreements.
Yeah. Well, Erika, thank you so much, and I really appreciate that. I'm looking for more people to realize this, and it's just all this the entrepreneurial journey that I don't have polite words for either. But really do just appreciate you and appreciate the work that you and SupportPay are doing. I do hope to meet Sherry one of these days, and I look forward to doing more with you. Erika, just let everybody know how they can reach out to you and or SupportPay.
Absolutely. First of all, likewise, delighted to be here with you. You can find out more about SupportPay at supportpay.com. You can find out more about WeParent at weparent.com. And both apps are available in the App Store and the Google Store. You can also follow me on Twitter. It's Erika Englund Esquire, where you'll find out a lot more of what I have to say about single parenting from my own perspective.
All right. Well, again, so Erika's one of those smart ones that figured it out how to do it the right way, and there's more smart people out there than we give them credit for. They just need to be. We need to give them the tools, kind of keep them on that straight and narrow path to the happier ever after, just separate. Erika.
Absolutely, a pleasure, Carl. Thank you.
It's a pleasure. We'll sign off today. Stay on, and we'll catch you on after we sign off. Thanks everybody for being here.